And we are live. I feel like I should put on some sort of radio voice, but I never have yet. So why start now? Hello, everybody. It's Friday, first Friday of March. We're in the third month of 2023 already. It's flying by, but I wish I could say it was looking springy, but it's kind of overcast today in not sunny North Carolina. So,
Same here.
yeah. Is
It's
it
been a gloomy
overcast there?
week. Yeah, all week.
Yeah, lots of rain and stuff. We did have a brief moment of nice, sunny, 60-ish degree weather. It was really nice. Stuart
It's
Stuart says I need to start practice with the radio voice. Well, here we go. It is Friday and we're ready for how's the traffic out there? So yeah,
we've
nah.
got birds. My dog is stalking in Philly, and some daisies springing up. So even though it is gray, there's little green shards.
All right.
Well, we used to have a lot of gray in May in San Diego, so we would call it May gray, but I really don't want March gray. I'd rather have some starting on spring weather. So that would be better. So any fun weekend plans? Anything nice? Anybody?
Not really. I am just getting ready for my trip. So, yeah, next week I won't be on the IT hour because I'm headed to Israel, and I'm super excited. Yeah, my brother's been living over there for about a year for work, and so my sister and I are headed to visit. So, yeah, just getting ready for it.
Exciting. Get that passport out.
I know. Yes.
I
I
hope
already
you
have
made
it. It's
sure
like
it wasn't
already.
expired.
Oh, it expires next year. So yes, it's very much on my radar.
Well, good, but at least it's not like expiring in a month because I've seen people post about that and then they're in a panic. It's like because you in a lot of places you can't travel if it expires in like within 6 weeks.
Mm.
There's a lot of countries that won't let you travel.
That would
So
give me a lot of anxiety, which
yeah,
I don't need any more of.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Well, that's going to be a lot of fun. Do you have any like? Are you just going to hang out? Or are you going to do any sort of touring and traveling and stuff?
A little bit of both. So he's based in Tel Aviv, so we'll spend most of our time there, but we're going to do an overnight in Jerusalem. And I think we're going to do like a day trip to Ayin Gedi and do the Dead Sea. So little bit of both, but we're going to relax a lot too.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Oh, we got the chat going like crazy this morning already. Yeah, Joshua is apparently in Charlotte. Same thing, sad and overcast. Chris, hey Chris. Chris is joining us over from the UK and saying less of the Fahrenheit. Sorry, we've had this discussion before. We are not good at translating into Celsius unless we have a calculator.
Yeah.
So sorry. Stuart's also in the UK saying cloudy here, no meatballs. Oh, that was one of my favorite books when I was a kid. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs.
Good one.
I love the illustrations because they were just so funny. Becca says, welcome, Becca. Chicago might be dodging winter number 3. It looks like Indiana is now getting most of our snow. Yikes.
That's right.
Can you
Yeah.
believe it? Actually, I have friends out in California who are getting snow, and it's just completely bizarre that they were getting that. Stuart wants you to pack him in the suitcase. It's
Come
on
on,
the
Stuart.
way. Just
Perfect.
stop in the UK on the way. Stuff them in your suitcase, and there you
Yeah.
go. You can renew passports online now. It only takes
Yes.
22-ish months. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're kind of required to do it online unless there are special circumstances. Like if you have a child passport, I think kids still have to be done in person.
They cash your check faster than 20 weeks.
That's true. They'll cash the check, but they'll still take 2-ish months or more to do anything with it. Jeff says it's cold, just effing cold. If I'm going to get pelted if I tell you what the temperature is here, but it's 61 degrees. So it's overcast, but it's not chilly, thankfully.
Same here.
Oh, Rob's going to actually you, Pam, because Pam said double plus 30. Rob says, actually, Pam, is closer to 1.6 plus 32. Well, I can't do 1.6 plus 32 in my head, but I could do double plus 30 to get an approximation, Rob. Yeah, see, Pam's agreeing. Nobody can do that in their head. And did you just actually me? Yes, he did, Pam. Yes, he did. Um, Aw, my son is at home today and he says she has glasses like me.
Aw,
Aw, that's cool. Oh, see, now we got math. Okay, that's it. Now we've got math in the chat. And even though it's almost lunchtime, it's still too early to do math because I still have coffee left, which means it's too early to do math. So
that's right.
with that, we're gonna we're gonna move on into the agenda. Typical agenda today. We've got community updates. We've got meetups. We've got a kitty cat. There we go.
She's got radar for the IT hour.
Yeah. Hey, Nona.
Come here, baby
She's
girl.
so fluffy.
She's so fluffy.
Yeah.
Oh,
Since
yeah.
she knew we were talking about animals in the chat before we started, so
I
she
did
had
look
to make
for
an
the
appearance.
black cat emoji, but there's not one on Crowdcast. So
I know.
settle for the goat.
Much more fun. And then someone getting Neil deGrasse in here. Oh boy. Oh, mention of Neil deGrasse means I gotta
That's
bust
right. I
out
was
my
gonna
picture.
say.
Yep, gotta bust out the picture. Me and Neil being buddies. We're gonna do community, then meetups, and not really a product update, but we'll mention what we're gonna do next week, and then on to the main topic, and that is why David is back again. So, oh, and then IT news if we have time. We've got some fun topics today. So, I will jump into community. We've got several things. Y'all are busy in the community, and we love to see that. So, David dropped an interesting discussion that you can jump into after we're done here. There is a new U.S. national cybersecurity strategy that just came out from the Biden administration. It's really interesting about holding companies accountable for their cybersecurity strategies. So go take a look at that and throw in your comments. We've got a couple of community questions that just came in and haven't been answered yet. So there's one about one user to multiple devices and CrowdStrike custom SAML app not fully working. If you have any advice or counsel on either one of those, go check them out and see if you can help. I put up a quick discussion based on what we talked about last week on ChatGPT and AI. Wanted to see if any of you are using those in your daily work. So tell me what you think about that and if you've already started putting it into action. Excuse me. Getting a little bit of a frog. Somebody put a frog in the chat and it got me. We've got a couple of new blog posts on the new Radical Admin blog. Go check it out and subscribe if you haven't seen it yet. Chris posted about MFA and what's holding up adoption for MSPs. And Pam has some great advice on writing proposals. Please go check those out. We'll drop a few of those links in the chat. And I'll do that while Alexa gives us a meetup update.
Yes. All right. So, yeah, today I just wanted to shout out everyone because we are officially at 1 year of the Meetups program. So, this is just kind of a celebration of that. Yeah, so just want to thank everyone who has been a part of the Meetup network, who's come to a meetup and a part of it. It's been so much fun since we launched last year. And yeah, I just wanted to kind of highlight a few things that we've accomplished in the last year. So without further ado, there's AJ, between last February and this February, we grew the network from 88 members to we are now at over 800 network members, which is just incredible. In that time, we have expanded from 10 cities to over 20 cities, which includes 6 additional countries. We've hosted over 50 meetups, which is almost like hosting one per week, which is amazing. And we have met with more than 300 IT professionals across the world. So just some really exciting momentum. It's been, again, so much fun to meet with everyone, just have really fun discussions around technology, because that is really what we are all about. So thank you, everyone. We are so excited for what is to come. But with that said, we want to make sure that we are always improving the program. So we are going to send out a little survey here soon to Meetup members and community members And we would love your input just to see what's working, what's not working, and what you want to see moving forward. So it's a really short survey, and that will be coming out in the next few weeks. So be on the lookout for that. But again, just thank you to everyone who has been on this journey with us, because it's been super exciting to see.
It sure has. And if you haven't been to a meetup, you're missing out.
What are you doing?
But if you're in a town where we haven't had one yet, then my apologies. We'll have some virtual ones soon, so you can join us from wherever you are, because we don't want to leave you out completely.
For sure.
That frog has me. Darn you, Kermit. All right. So again, thanks, Rob, for tossing that in there. He threw in one of those links because he just happened to be on it. And next, product releases. We are going to have something on group policy templates that is coming out. We're going to talk about it on next week's IT Hour. Rob McGrath is going to join us and give a quick demo on that. So stay tuned there. So we're not going to go over that in too much detail today. So, compliance. Those of you who complied by joining us today, thank you. David is here to talk a little bit about compliance and what we mean by that and what's going on in the compliance world. So, David, we've got some guides, we've got some blog posts. You wrote something in the community just a couple days ago. So tell us what's going on with compliance and why are we talking about it today?
Just a few small questions, huh?
No pressure.
Well, compliance can be a very challenging topic. So before we get into it, we have a few quick start guides. This one is for folks who aren't working with an MSP so that they can have a bit of a foundation and guidance for data compliance. This next one is designed for MSPs that help their customers, which MSPs can play a really important role as the most trusted advisor in this area. So it's always good to help our partners and friends at MSPs. So that said, a little while back, I'd written a post on cloud compliance that is going out through many of our channels. And it generally overviews types of cloud compliances and how they're different from on-prem. And there's really, e-crime is a top category. Cloud is a top category in e-crime. In many cases, there's lower skills required, and hackers have a service model. There's identity brokers and so forth. And in some cases, there's more frequent and complex attacks, as we've seen this week in tech news. Exploitation of containers, that's really the most complex topic. And we could spend a long time discussing that. But what it comes down to is the shared responsibility, control, and security in the cloud. And there's more and more sensitive data and infrastructure moving to the cloud. And that is sometimes happening without a deep understanding of the responsibilities for who has the responsibilities for security and data handling. And that can expand the threat surface area. So the article that I put out there, what is cloud compliance, shares what some of those standards are from ISO, NIST, and others, and what typically those technical controls and document controls and such are. And those standards have evolved to meet and address some of these new challenges. And this is a significant topic for many businesses because, in Europe we have GDPR. There's NISD, California's Consumer Privacy Act. And in some cases, when a big state like California does that, or a big region of the world, it becomes a template for a framework for liability when there are data breaches or data exfiltration of protected customer data. So this is a very, very serious topic, but it is approachable. How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? I remember my initial experience with compliance. It wasn't necessarily just cloud. It was an ISO audit. And that was an eye-opener about how even small things such as document control and versioning count, where you keep your documents, having your own internal auditors, practice audits, and various things that can help you be more successful, so that when there is an actual audit, it's not a fire drill that stresses everyone out. These things really take long-term planning and consideration to happen. And I do have to say, an immediate concern, something that's a common thread through many of these attacks, is identity in the cloud. And that's something our friends at CrowdStrike have identified in some recent reports that have gone out on the threat landscape and trends that are happening this year and last. And in many cases, they've even pivoted from threat hunting to identity protection. There's more and more malware-free attacks and intrusions happening simply because attestation isn't happening. There's little knowledge of what types of permissions various identities have. And it's something to pay a lot of attention to. So not every organization, I'm going to shift gears here, is going to be facing a very serious formal compliance standard. And this is something that at a couple internal meetings I called Diet Coke compliance. And it's, if you ask around, and many of you, you're all in IT in various sectors, there's more and more requirements coming down from, say, insurers, or if you're in finance, Morgan Stanley and others, or if you're an attorney, the bar associations. A big one was the New York Bar Association, saying you need to really think about security in these types of controls. And if you really look at the essence of it, it's very similar to the frameworks in some of these more formal standards. I had recently written something about the importance of, said Diet Cola, so we didn't get in any trouble, Diet Cola compliance, and how that's even driving some organizations that are smaller, mom and pop, or people are just overly stressed with their daily work, let alone being able to focus on security and IT, and how this type of Diet Cola compliance is what is finally enticing folks to seek help. And that's where we get back to our MSP partners and friends being a very valuable resource in that area. And we could probably go deeper if there's some questions, but we could end up going so deep that this talk will never end. So I will pause there.
I don't think we have any real questions in the chat yet. So I think we could just stay a little bit surface level until something comes up, because I don't know if any of our brains on Friday are ready to go super deep as of yet, but we'll keep an eye on it and see what happens. So, where do you want to go next?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Well, we could discuss the national cybersecurity strategy, because that also sets some minimum standards.
True. I was thinking about that when I pulled that up, because this really does play into where are we going with compliance, and the government may be stepping in on part of that, because holding companies responsible for breaches and cybersecurity and things like that really plays a big part in where we go from here, right? But we could also talk about the burden of compliance for small, medium enterprise and how that plays into things. Like I've got a friend who's a CIO and they went through, an audit a couple years ago and they did their thing and they're trying to comply with their audit, but they're really not because they don't have enough people, right? So they said they were going to do some things, um, but they haven't had the time to document it and fully do it. So this idea of trying to do all of these things is tough, right? So we could go in a couple of different directions. It just depends on. I mean, you're leading the conversation today, so where do you want to where do you want to head first? And
Okay.
everybody in the chat, let's see where you want to.
Yeah,
Oh, we've got a couple of things that are popping up in the chat. So why don't you take
there's
a look
quite
and
a few questions coming up that we'd probably have to have someone such as our friend Tom Bridge on to address things that we can share on the roadmap. Jump Cloud is very serious about compliance and security, and just stay tuned. There's always things that are coming out, and it's something that we are aware of and acknowledge is important to you.
in fact, I think the last time Tom was on, somebody had asked about this with the macOS security compliance
I
project
downloaded
like Jamf.
Yeah, I downloaded that Git repo just 2 days ago and was playing around with that. That's definitely a question for Tom. I have done some things. We have some great community content on that project, as well as hardening Kitty for Windows. I've set up a few PowerShell commands in my own Jump Cloud tenant and set up a baseline using PowerShell. These questions, of course, are looking for something that is more of a part of the normal workflow. And unfortunately, I hate to be the one to pass the buck, but I also don't want to speak out of turn or be premature in disclosing something.
Right.
Um,
So
you'll
for
be happy. You'll be happy, folks.
the roadmap implementing the macOS security compliance project, we will talk to Tom and then that'll probably be something that we'll talk about in the future, but we'll ask him if there's anything we can discuss. I think the last answer was we can't answer that yet. But we'll double check. Alexa, if you'll capture that. I'm sure you already are because you're always on top of it. Um, Keith is asking pretty similar question about reporting and policies. Any requests that Jump Cloud is working towards, such as macOS security compliance and reporting out, say NIST or CMMC. Um, Again, we will find out because that's not our exact area that we can speak on. But I will just say that internally we are talking a lot about security right now because that is it's a big topic everywhere, right? But we keep seeing things in the news about stuff, and that is making us want to make sure that we're doing everything we can internally to make sure that we're doing the best we can with security and everything. Uh David, Joe's asking, can you share those PowerShell commands?
I linked to a write-up that my colleague Jurgen did over a year ago, and that's changed because of just how hardening Kitty is structured now. But I shared my company email there, and I can just copy and paste the commands that I've used, and I'm more than happy to do that. Um,
I'm gonna say in the vein of sharing, it wouldn't hurt
Community?
to put it in the community, yeah.
All right.
And that way, in the spirit of working out loud, that way others can find it later if they need to too. Uh, so I think that would be a great place. Whether you tack it on to Jurgen's post, I mean, you could do that, or you could start a new one and then just, put a comment on Jurgen's linking to your updated things, however you want to do that. Um,
And just looking back in this thread, I'll just say these are serious questions and you'll get a serious response. It's just a matter of when and who and how we disclose things.
Yeah, Kelly's given a +1 for the NIST CMMC compliance options, but she also had a question about orgs that aren't necessarily required to be compliant by government regulations or anything. What's a good way to encourage them to improve?
See, that's the Diet Coke compliance thing. And I wrote that after the experience of helping two friends. One is sort of a boutique financial planning firm for very high net worth folks who take their privacy seriously. And then another is a family law firm in New York. The latter I started with and implemented Jump Cloud from a Microsoft 65 account that had Azure AD free and was able to implement a bunch of security controls. Everything from SSO to push MFA through conditional access and device postures using Harden Kitty and some of our pre-built policies, which of course are going to be easier to consume in the near future. Actually, now it's live, it's GA with the policy templates that we are maintaining. And there will be discussion about that next week. So you folks that are asking all these questions might benefit from coming back when that particular team is hosting. So with these folks, and the other was in Azure, the financial firm was an Azure AD environment, and they didn't want to change off of that. And I ended up working through a lot of licensing craziness and best practices for Azure, as well as Intune is next. But it's essentially the same thing, to treat the device as a gateway, to protect identities, to go through attestation and make sure that admins have privileged access and limited access, at least role based on the Microsoft side, and that people have the correct and appropriate access to what they need. It really took the Bar Association in New York for the law firm, and it took Morgan Stanley with the other firm saying, okay, you need to do these things. Your investment wing, all the AUM, assets under management you have, that won't be able to perform your job and access our systems if you don't do these things. Otherwise, I've been chatting with these folks for well over a year, maybe even close to 2. It's like, yeah, we understand this. We know we have to do this. And it's really the threat of the hammer coming down, either through an insurer, who, by the way, they are in many cases no longer going to the underwriters are no longer going to grant policies to companies that don't have security controls in place. And if you've had a breach, it's going to become a pre-existing condition. So in some ways, it's fear that's driving these companies, but it's also an acknowledgement that things are changing. And in some cases, it's becoming easier to implement these things, at least using Jump Cloud. So I don't know if that answers the question, but it was really larger bodies and larger vendors saying, hey, come on now, that drove them to do it. Because in a lot of cases, these folks really don't have the time. They wear multiple hats. They work very hard. And it's not part of their daily life. It's not part of their job to do cybersecurity. And in many cases, they don't necessarily even have MSP partners. So, having a candid conversation about these Diet Coke compliance things that are coming and insurance requirements, or maybe referring someone to the appropriate MSP partner to support them, is a good idea. So I haven't caught up with the comments here, but hopefully this was something that was helpful in my response.
Yeah, Kelly's saying knowing that insurance underwriters might change their stance on security baselines really helps. That's very true, because a lot of cyber insurance carriers are now saying, if you do not do these things, if you do not follow these rules, if you're not compliant in these ways, we will not cover you, or your premiums are going to be extra high because you're not doing these things. So we did actually have a recent post by Chris Tate on the new Radical Admin blog about insurance. And then after I don't know, several weeks ago, when we talked a little bit about cyber insurance, a friend of mine who works for an insurer wrote a post, and I put it in best practices as well, talking a little bit about what you should know when you talk to a carrier. Because Kelly, you had several questions about what do you ask a carrier and how do you know how to fill out the paperwork and everything. So there are a couple of good things out in the community around that. You might be able to use those to kind of push those companies that are like, well, we don't want to comply. We don't know how to comply. I mean, they're at risk. So using those types of things of, oh, you won't be covered, or even looking in the news and giving them examples of companies who have had major breaches because they didn't comply, they weren't compliant, they didn't update, they didn't patch, they didn't do these things that are easy and simple, and they got caught out because of it. Those are all good ways to kind of scare them into compliance a little bit. So that might be one way.
Fear can be a good motivator. But in the case of some of these firms, especially the financial service ones, it was just practical. You can't do your job if you can't access the system you make your investments on. So it came down to, do you want to work or not work?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking through the comments here to see what else. Thanks, Pam, for dropping that in there. Rob, let's see. You finished the longest fight with your insurance carrier because they want NIST recommended no forced password changes, but PCI compliance requirements are still demanding 90-day password changes. Yeah, so there's some conflict there between NIST and PCI. So
Even
that's
Microsoft Azure doesn't want you to change your passwords. It's a standard practice there now. So yeah, it seems like there's a few conversations to be had.
Yeah, and Keith is saying, David, good to hear, helping out a friend's org with CMMC, but it looked practical for just auditing employee access to all our apps too. So, yeah, there's still some conflicts in the industry as to what the best practices really are, and so that makes compliance a little bit harder. Like, who do you go with? Who do you listen to? And things like that. So, um, how do you get your insurance carrier to listen? I mean, that your insurance carrier, I mean, they should know about PCI stuff. If you're processing credit cards, they should be up on that. So, that's kind of tough.
Yeah, and modern authentication is something that makes some of this password discussion moot. The password's not going to go away, but in many cases, for instance, just using certificate-based authentication for some things, or even Windows Hello, ever float your boat, is even stronger. Just passwords only, frown the face. Passwords with MFA, it's like, but when you get to modern authentication, it's a big old smile if you look at it as a spectrum. So maybe some of these standards bodies need to chat more with the industry at large.
Yeah, banks are an interesting animal. I've been talking to as part of a couple of IT associations. I've been talking to some. Well, actually, there's quite a few different banks that are members of these associations. So I get to talk to all different types of people in IT at different banks, and just how all of their practices are a little bit different. But it gets interesting at times to see how their practices are way different than other industries. Um, and Kelly's saying, "Nothing makes me happier than filling out a form and getting an error because my password is too long." Uh, that may have happened on the community when we first set it up. Sorry. Because somebody pinged me about that because I didn't realize that our platform vendor had not opened that up. So we fixed that fairly quickly. But we're limited by what requirements they have, right? So sometimes you get stuck on that too, like what platform are you using and things like that. Having to change your default password generator settings because it won't accept a hashtag in your password. Yeah. Oh, Kelly says, Jacob, I'm certain it involves a fax machine. Ugh. Ouch. I love it when I get an email from, like a phishing attempt where it says, "You've got a fax." I'm like, "Really? I do? Hmm." So Jeff's voting with his money and moving money away from banks that don't use MFA or only use texting.
There's a website somewhere I used to check in that has a listing of websites of organizations that either have MFA or not. You could probably go on Google or ask Bing a question if it doesn't have a meltdown and find out what that is. It's just been a while. I can't remember. But that could be something that's a good guide to vote with your purse, wallet, whatever you use.
Yeah, TOTP, all the things, Rob. But you know what's frustrating? I'm trying to take over a YouTube account for the nonprofit I'm a part of. And it had someone else's phone number in there. So I'm trying to change it to mine to make it easier to do, two-factor. And I had to have them help me get in, right? Because it's texting them with the authentication. So I had to get it sent to them. I had to wait for them to give me it and then just to get in. And then I tried to change the phone number and I had to get them texted again. And then I finally got in and then I went to change the phone number to mine and then it sent them another one. Then I finally got all that done. And then I went to add someone else to the account as a manager and it texted them again instead of me. Even though I had changed the account to my phone number and it was verified that it was in there and I verified my number. When I went to add a new manager to the account, it said, "Well, we need to verify this." It came up with their phone number instead of mine. I'm like, "Google, you're killing me. I already did everything you asked me to, and my phone number is in there as verified." I went back to the account to check it, and it still had their phone number in there when I went to add someone. I'm like, "I give up." I'm so sick of this. So sometimes it backfires.
It sounds like Google would be even better with a great cloud directory.
Well, this is a small, like a really small nonprofit. I'm on the board and it's just a struggle. Like we don't really use Google for a lot of stuff, but we're hosting our videos on YouTube and people change places on the board and stuff, so we shuffle things around. But you don't want someone else's phone number in there every time you try to log in. So I took over and I'm trying to switch it, but I I was about ready to lose it because that other person is busy and I don't want to keep bugging them.
Well, yeah, I thought you were going to say, because those codes time out too, and Pam was on the same page as me. I thought you were going to say, she got the code but didn't get it to you quick enough, and
Well, that did happen the other night, which is why, like, a few nights ago, I was trying it and just wasn't working, but we had our board meeting last night, so it was right after that, so I was trying to keep it active long enough to where it wouldn't time out, but, oh my god, I wanted to go to dinner and get some food with me and my kid, and it's just like, "Okay, this is ridiculous." I'm about ready to throw my computer across the room because I just can't deal with it any longer. Because it took, like, 5 different codes to get through all of this, and, yeah. But I'm hoping that the next time I try to do something, it will actually use my phone number. Yeah, I wish I could have just used JetCloud Password Manager.
Yeah,
But
there's a
we don't.
human side
Yeah.
to all this, to MFA.
Uh-huh.
Geez, I remember back before I took over the IT department at my old previous organization, someone had the brilliant idea of having biometrics for clock-ins on a factory floor, which when you think of everyone going out for a break at the same time or rolling in the same time in the morning, how shifts work, and know anything about manufacturing, you end up with a bottleneck at that clock. And if you have people who are working on the factory floor, some of them don't have fingerprints because those fingers are getting beat up or burnt. So it was very problematic. So it's important to think about people when you think about authentication and what method is best for them.
Yeah, and we are talking about going to a password manager, but what I'm trying to do is actually authorize YouTube managers so that they can use their normal accounts, and then we don't have to worry about logging into the central account as much, and it just makes it easier. But you got to do it at least one time. And then we are talking about some sort of password manager that allows us to share between these accounts so that you don't have this problem that it doesn't matter when people shuffle around on the board. You've still got centralized management, and it makes it less of a problem. But again, when you're talking about a really small nonprofit that doesn't have a ton of money, it's difficult. It's really, really hard to do. Um, Speaking of frustrating MFA TOTP items, Keith is asking this. What are people doing to alert their employees that when they get a new phone, how to self reset their MFA token? What do you think, David? You got any ideas on that, or if someone wants to answer that in the chat?
Maybe in the chat. I haven't encountered that for a while. Um, that's a good question. It might be something that is more of a device team question as well. I've been so focused on back end
Mhm.
security and compliance as of late that this hasn't come up on my radar.
Yeah, you have to kind of proactively you kinda have to proactively tell people like, "Hey, if you get a new phone, remember you're gonna have to reset and here are the instructions." But you're also going to have a way for them to get a hold of it other than on their device so they can access those instructions not on their device, because that gets tricky.
Yeah, it's
Um,
definitely something that support teams struggle with because sometimes the ticket comes in after the fact versus before. It's always good to communicate your policies out, and even then, stuff's going to happen. But if those tickets can be reduced or eliminated just through good communication, that's helps.
if you're getting it in Slack, Keith, and they already have, access to Slack on their phone, but they just don't have the rest of it, I would recommend having a channel where the instructions to that are pinned somewhere so that you can, the instructions on how to self reset are pinned somewhere, bookmarked on a channel so they can find them and follow those instructions. Um, but probably, yeah, like Nathan says, you try to inform them they need to do this, but more than often they get locked out and contact you. It's tough because it happens, you know, all the time.
Okay,
Uh,
that can be intimidating too. Sometimes people want a little bit of hand holding depending on who the user is, and that's going to happen regardless. We've all encountered that.
a variation of the scream test, and Kelly saying, I might regret asking, but what's the scream test? Don't know what the server does, but we need to decommission it, turn it off, and wait to see who screams. Yep. Oh, Kelly, you're right. Great use for a Slack bot command. So, yeah, you could set up a Slack bot command where someone can just say a certain question of how do I reset my MFA, and then it would auto send them the instructions. We do that for our Wi-Fi password in office. So when you're in the office, you can ask for the Wi-Fi password and it will give it to you. So that's a really easy. I think it's the same thing for VPN. My VPN wasn't working and I was trying to figure out what was going on and I had to put in the correct secret and then it was working again. Question or both should respond. All right. So anything else on compliance or do you want to do IT news, David?
I think IT news. I'm kind of clamoring to discuss the national cybersecurity strategy deal a bit. So, shall we get started with that?
Let's do it.
Not everyone's in the U.S. There are other organizations that are doing similar things to this. But basically, what we're seeing now is a little bit of software liability shifting more towards the big vendors. I haven't dug in deeply enough to get a full appreciation of that, but one of the people who worked on this is an old pal from the Solarium Commission. So basically, what he wrote, his name's Corey, terrific person, veteran lawyer, cyber tech person, all around superstar. So basically, what Corey had shared is that these guidelines rebalance the responsibility to defend cyberspace to really the actors, both public and private, either being big software vendors, or say intelligence agencies or defense agencies, and putting more of the burden on them to improve security. They're basically the most capable, best positioned actors for this. So it's a little bit of a realignment in both the public and private sectors. So they are going to share more of the burden. What that ends up looking like, honestly, don't know, or how that gets achieved. Definitely deserves a bit more study. There's also going to be incentives for longer term investments to improve security. There is an FAQ that was released by the administration, and it probably has some more information there, but I'm thinking back, this is not a new discussion about how much liability a software maker should have, right? I'm coming from fire safety some years ago, where if we had fire sprinklers or valves that didn't work, that's a major lawsuit or recall, and that would potentially have demolished the entire business. So we had to get it right, not only from a financial perspective, but from a human perspective. It's life safety. So I've always been a bit bugged. It gets up in my crawl when there's might be major disruptions to utilities or supply chain, things that affect people's lives just because of sloppy coding. It's not trivial stuff. We all know that. But reminded of back when, during the Elizabethan age, where the railroads were really transforming industry in the UK, right? And there were some major railroad bridge collapses. And then that just happened too much for everyone's taste, and there started to be some basic standards to build a strong bridge. So it appears that is what's happening, at least at a high level. How it's implemented and all, well, I guess we'll see. Any more news here?
Sorry, I was trying to come off of mute. Oh, Kitty again. Hi, Nona. She's so cute.
Sort of an icebreaker there with Kitty. There is a CNET article about a beverage printer. Did either of you see that?
I have seen some things like that, where you can put different cartridges in some various things to make all kinds of beverages, but I haven't heard it called a beverage printer. So
It can
that's kind of
do some adult beverages, sugary drinks, caffeine. I wonder if it has an IV for that caffeine.
I know several people on the regulars on the show who might like that idea. Oh yeah, the freestyle machines would kind of already be that, right? Like, 'cause they do so many different types. But I've seen, okay, so I get targeted with ads on a certain social media site a lot, where I will see things like they'll you you put the alcohol bottles in, and then they'll have the little flavor packets where you can make different cocktails out of
My
it.
neighbors
It's almost like a Keurig, right? Where you put those in. I've seen lots of ads for those, but I don't personally,
they broke out that
drink enough.
machine at their dog's birthday party. It was a fun birthday.
I bet. Yeah, so those sound interesting. But what I want more than a thing that makes a lot of drinks, although if I could get, you know, let's see, Dr. Pepper, cherry Dr. Pepper Zero, and my go-to, the
Your beloved.
sugar-free, yeah, my sugar-free, Mountain Dew Code Red. If I could get something that did both of those, yeah, I'd be a happy camper. But what I really want is an ice maker that does the pellet ice, like the Sonic type
It's the
ice.
best.
I've seen, the little GE ones that have mixed reviews, like some of them work really well and some of them don't. They look like fun, but I used to work in an office that had the really nice ones that do ice and water, and it'll just do it on demand. There's a particular brand that I'm looking at that I want, but they're commercial grade ones. There's a couple different companies that make those. That's the kind I want. I want the full on, but they're not 3 digits worth of, they cost like 4 digits. So I'm like,
My friend's coffee shop makes coffee ice cubes. So if any of you have ever had an iced coffee, here's Exhibit A, and you take a few sips and then womp womp, you just have ice left. Sometimes, I will desperately suck at the melting ice to get more coffee, but imagine those being coffee. So you're getting coffee as it melts.
So it doesn't water it down. That's
Yeah, saves a trip away from the desk.
nice. That would be good. I like that. I suppose you could just make some cold brew and then, freeze it. And then when you're making your coffee, just drop a few of those in there. And then it would intensify your coffee as you go along instead of making it
It
less.
always tastes better when someone else makes it. I don't
That's
know why.
true. Ah, Kelly's saying that's a great use for yesterday's coffee. That's a good point. Just when it's done, just keep a couple of ice cube trays, pour it in there, pop it in the freezer, and then when you're making your coffee, if you want iced coffee, just pop a couple of those in there.
I like Rob's suggestion even more. Those really large whiskey type ice cubes
Oh,
that
like those big round or
up a
square
cocktail.
ones? Yeah. Then you just need one.
You could sip some bourbon, or in this case, caffeine.
Yep. It fills the whole fills the whole glass. Then you've got a big giant cube and just a little bit of coffee. It'll definitely keep it cold for you. Um, Here's one that's a little less fun and a little more serious because LastPass is in the news again. It says they said that an employee's home computer was hacked and their corporate vault was taken. So they're already smarting from a breach that put partially encrypted login data into a threat actor's hands. Goodness. I don't know what's going on today. On Monday, they said the same attacker hacked an employee's home computer and obtained a decrypted vault available to only a handful of company developers. So they targeted a DevOps engineer's home computer and exploited a vulnerable third-party media software package, which enabled them to have remote code execution and allowed them to implant a keylogger. So there were only 4 LastPass employees with access to the corporate vault. So these people really did their homework and targeted a person who had a particular set of software on their home computer and managed to get the decryption keys needed to access LastPass's AWS S3 production backups and other cloud-based storage resources and some related critical database backups. That's some serious research and work
The
and
case for
everything.
the FBI, but that gets back to device as a gateway and managing your identity as well as attestation and compliance. But not going to throw mud here. It's a very unfortunate thing for that employee in particular.
Oh,
LastPass
yeah.
and its customers, oftentimes in the world of security, The difference between vendors could even come down to being luck. It's no one wants to cast stones. Security is
Oh, no.
hard, and in this case, it's something that you go around, look at any organization, even some of the banks and others we're talking about. Does anyone realistically think that a similar type of advanced attack, sophisticated attack like that wouldn't happen elsewhere?
I just think it's interesting that the same attacker keeps, um, going after them over and over and has gone so far as to find out that there were, a particular employee and going after them and going after the home computer. And, you know, people are saying that, yeah, they shouldn't be allowing access to a vault from home computer. And we've been having some of these talks recently internally about, you know, not accessing anything for work from personal devices as much as possible. Now, email is one thing that's slightly different from a phone, but everything else, nothing personal on your work computer. Nothing work on your personal computer. We're having all these discussions around what does security look like a larger discussion about security in general at companies and things like that, because it's a really interesting discussion around how do you secure devices, because we're looking at our software. How do we make sure that we're helping people secure things, right? So not to comment on our this is just in general, right? Like I can't comment on our security team because that's not my place. They're having their own discussions. But in general, this is scary that someone is really targeting someone in such a particular way. And it's we're not throwing shade at LastPass. We're just this is just a
No, not at all.
no, this is just a discussion around, wow, that is really they're really going all for it.
Yeah, I'm seeing a number of questions in the channel here, and some of these may be better directed towards Antoine and his team for password manager. But at the high level, it's a decentralized architecture without a master password, and it uses PKI to sync to other devices. There's some very thoughtful questions here about which devices may be added. Given it is integrated with Jump Cloud, and I've gone in as an administrator to assign rights to password manager, my gut would be that you only allow Jump Cloud to sign in on devices that are trusted and enrolled into Jump Cloud. Would that prevent password manager from then being enrolled on another device? That I haven't tested out. I don't want to give bad guidance or bad advice in that area, but you do see, as an administrator, I believe, what devices are enrolled. But this is more of a question for that team, and it's a good question that we should pass on.
Yeah, because I'm seeing Jump Cloud Password Manager relying on additional devices to be backup of your data, which may be a personal phone or a device. I think that's up to probably the administrator, but we can check with him on Shu and Antoine. And then can you limit to only connect from a device enrolled in some capacity in Jump Cloud? I don't know, but like Alexa said, we're writing down all these questions so we can go back to Himanshu, the PM, and have him talk more about that. In fact, maybe we can have him come on sometime soon and talk through some of these things. Or if nothing else, we'll try to get some questions answered on the community, because all of this is just the way hackers are really dedicating themselves to things like this and really, really going all in is just a general industry concern where everybody needs to be thinking about this. Like, what if someone does come after your company in this way? What are you going to do and how are you going to deal with it? And it comes back a little bit to compliance in general, like how are you going to secure your environments, and how would you fight something like this if someone decides to come after you?
Planning
And
your response, going through those exercises, it's not trivial stuff. I just remembered something that we discussed on the roadmap for, I believe, Q2 for Password Manager, and that is a type of cloud backup. I haven't gotten hands-on into any beta release, um, but I'm wondering whether an admin might be able to centralize a backup to a repository. That's something I am wondering. So I have my own question there, but it does sound like we're thinking about these things pretty thoughtfully.
yeah, and Kelly's saying making yourself a smaller target is always helpful, like, securing everything you can so that you're less likely to be targeted, is is a good idea. Um And then, one really I know we're at time, but there was one really fun thing when it comes to advances in technology I wanted to point out, that Japan has suddenly gotten bigger than we thought it was. Um, Japan has 7,000 islands it didn't know it had, thanks to advanced survey mapping technology. The, Geospatial Information Authority of Japan, the GSI, found 14,125 islands during its surveillance, a huge difference from the 6,852 islands it had recorded in 1987. When the Coast Guard counted islands 35 years ago, the technology was not able to distinguish between small clusters of islands and larger individual islands. And in the years since then, volcanic eruptions have contributed to formations of new islands, and then, just not being able to distinguish as well previously. So they used some techniques to tabulate the number of islands, marking only those that have a circumference of 100 meters, which is 330 feet or greater, and were natural formations. And all of a sudden, they've got 7,000 more islands than they thought they did. So I just thought that was really fascinating that all of a sudden Japan has grown bigger than we thought it was. So watch
Could
out.
someone go in and claim an island, or are they just automatically part of Japan?
I don't know.
Can I give AJ his own island here, and he could be ruler of it? Where is he?
I don't know. I think if
He
it's
rules my house.
I think if it's still within their, purview of the sea that they control, then it's still theirs. So Japan sounds like the study in Minnesota, not the land of 10,000 lakes, land of 4.2 million lakes. Yeah, it's just interesting how technology grows and gets better, and then all of a sudden you find out that you've got something you didn't think you had. So I just thought that was a fun thing way to end it. All of those news links will be in the IT hour recap that Alexa will put on the community, and hopefully you will join us next week. Oh, what Rob says, movies that have that whole stuck on an island trope, people not realizing that it's actually quite easy to have that happen. I guess especially in Japan now, because now you have 7,000 more to get stuck on than you thought. So anyway, have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Join us next week. We will have some more fun for you, and we'll say bon voyage to Alexa as she heads overseas. Don't get stuck on an island off of Israel somewhere. So
Try not to.
all right. I look forward to a future IT hour from Jump Cloud Island.
Look forward to hearing about your trip too. Have a safe journey.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye.
good one. Thanks for joining us, David. Bye.